Hello, everybody, and welcome to this theory video, which will be looking at trading blocks and the roles of the World Trade Organization, the WTO. This is a video which covers part of 4.1, so it's a topic linked to globalization. Right now, first of all, a trading bloc. A trading bloc is simply a group of countries that come together, sign agreements to promote increased economic integration between the members. So this would normally be about removing as many protectionist barriers as possible. So this could be about lowering tariffs. It could be about removing non-tariff barriers, going against subsidies to domestic firms. So it's designed to promote more competition and trade between the members within that trading bloc. These are called regional trade agreements because they tend to be set up amongst neighbours across the world. So the most famous one is the European Union. So the EU is made up at the moment of 27 European states that have agreed to integrate their economies closer together. We have deals in other corners of the world, such as NAFTA in North America, which brings together America, Mexico, and Canada. But we have these things that also exist across Asia. We have them across Africa. So these things are more or less in every single corner of the world these days. Now, the World Trade Organization is a global body that is set up to try and encourage as much international trade as possible. So what they do is they will bring together members who, the countries that are in the World Trade Organization, and sit down with them and try to encourage through regular meetings, or what we call rounds, to negotiate the removal of as many trade barriers as possible. They will also sitting on disputes between members to try and deal with conflicts that might happen linked to international trade. The WTO believe that trade should be based on comparative and absolute advantages because of all the benefits that we looked at of trade in an earlier video. Right, now, just some more things I want to mention on here. We can have what we call a bilateral agreement and a multilateral agreement. So when you think about a trading bloc, this is normally a multilateral agreement. It's an agreement between 3 or more countries to lower their protectionist barriers, to integrate their economies closer together. So multilateral is 3 or more countries. A bilateral agreement would be deals between one country and another country. So 2 countries coming together to try and reduce trade barriers between the members to integrate their 2 economies closer together. Since leaving the European Union, the UK is going across the world negotiating lots of bilateral agreements to trying to establish reduced trade restrictions with America, with Japan, with Australia, and other leading economies across the world. Right now, before we delve into the world of trading blocks in more detail, I just want to show you this, a bit more information on the World Trade Organization. Now, the World Trade Organization, as I mentioned before, will, for a series of rounds, so these things will be where we get all the member states together, so all the leaders from all the members within the World Trade Organization, to come together to try to reduce the restrictions on trade between their members. Now, the World Trade Organization have got views on trading blocks. Now, what they like about regional trading blocks is that it promotes trade between members. So they like the fact that it promotes trade in the EU between Britain, well, up until recently anyway, Germany, Italy, Spain, France, etc. They like the fact it promotes trade between their members. But as we'll see later on, that sometimes what regional trade agreements can do, they can lead to economies within that trading bloc trading more with each other, but it can often lead to less trade with other countries across the world. Okay, so they like the fact it promotes trade between the members, but they don't like the fact that it might limit trade with non-members. So we'll give these different things names. We have something we call trade creation and something that we call trade diversion. So trade creation occurs when, through bilateral and multilateral trade agreements, the 2 economies, or the 3 or more economies that sign those agreements, are agreeing to trade more with each other. So because protectionist policies start to fall and those members trade more, we've got trade creation, and that promotes more specialization. It promotes growth of firms across them economies, and it promotes more trade based on absolute and comparative advantage. Now, what they don't like is something called trade diversion. So if you're a member of a trading bloc, it might promote trade more between you and other members, but it might mean that you trade less with non-members from outside your trading bloc. And that could mean you might move from importing from a really, really efficient country to a less efficient member state of your trade agreement. So guys, the WTO likes the fact that trading blocs creates trade creation, but what they don't like is the fact that it can also lead to trade diversion. What the WTO would like is for these big trading blocs to now negotiate and work together to sign bigger trade agreements between trading blocs, because that would lead to even more trade creation on a global scale. So overall, guys, regional trade agreements might promote globalization across your continent, your trading bloc, but they might not lead to true globalization across the planet. Right, what I'd like you to now do is to hit pause and jot down your answers to these 5 questions on the screen. So hit pause, please answer A, B, C, D, and E, and when you're ready, please hit play. Right, welcome back, everybody. Now, what we're going to be looking at in the rest of this video are different types of trading blocs. So we're going to be thinking about preferential trade agreements, free trade agreements, customs unions, common markets, and something we call economic and monetary unions. And you've got here a nice visualization of what these different things actually mean. Okay, so what I'll do, I'll talk through these different ideas and we'll keep linking it back to this slide here. Right, okay, so let's start off then with a free trade area. Now, what you'll notice on the previous slide is that there is a type of trading bloc before this one. So before we get to a free trade area or agreement, we might have a preferential trade area. Now, a preferential trade area will be when a group of economies will agree to reduce protectionist policies between each other. So they might agree to lower, but not completely remove things like tariffs, quotas, domestic subsidies. So they're agreeing to allow more trade to exist between the different members. Now, a free trade area will take this up a notch. This is where the members of the trading blocs, the countries that join it, will now allow for complete free trade between each other. So that means that goods and services can flow freely between these member states within these trading blocs. So what that will allow for more specialization, more trade based on absolute and comparative advantage between these members. So it's about removing these barriers to international trade between the members. Now, what these countries can still do, though, is to remain independent with other countries across the world. So the idea could be, for example, that country A and country B and country C, they come together to form a free trade area. So country A, B, and C are now allowing for complete free trade to exist between their 3 different countries. But they now have sovereignty, or what we call independence, to make their own decisions with different countries across the world. The idea could be now that country A might decide that what they're going to do is to sign a bilateral trade agreement with country D. So A, B, and C have got free trade together. Then A might sign another agreement with D to allow free trade to take place. Now, the problem is B and C, they might want to maintain protectionist policies against D. So the problem now is A has got free trade with D. A, B, and C have got free trade together as well. Now, this creates a risk of something that we call trade deflection. So the idea will be that country D could now get round the protectionist policies imposed on it by countries B and C by, first of all, sending their products into country A, who they've got free trade with. And then once they're in A, country A can then send these products into B and C, where there are no trade restrictions. So it's a way of deflecting trade around these different barriers. So what you often get with free trade areas is something that we call rules of origin. And this means that when countries export into another country within their trading bloc, they've got to prove where most of the production of that good or service was made. So A, for example, if they've got a free trade deal with D, before they send their products into B and C, they would have to prove to B and C them products were made in their economy to try and prevent the problems of trade deflection. Okay, so when you think about the benefits of free trade areas, then it's promoting more trade between the members. So we get more of those wonderful benefits of trade, specialization, bigger markets for the firms, more competition, lower prices. So this is the reason why countries will often sign these different things. Now, clearly, though, a big problem of it will be that within these economies, industries that are less efficient than industries in other members will start to decline. So some industries will grow and some will decline. That could lead to some deindustrialization taking place in some of these different countries. Okay, now I'll just go back a slide. So look what you've got then. You've got here exactly what preferential trade agreements and free trade agreements do. So a preferential trade agreement is about reducing but not eliminating barriers. So some protectionism will remain, but it's getting lower to allow for a bit more trade to take place. Free trade agreements will completely eliminate tariffs. So this will allow for more goods and services to be exported and traded between the member states. What we're now going to be thinking about is a customs union. Now, it's worth noting, first of all, that a customs union will build on a free trade agreement. So we're going to start off with a free trade agreement, and we're going to think about what additional things they will do. Now, guys, before we do that, what I would like to do, please, is to look at these questions here. So these are predominantly about free trade areas. So please hit pause, answer these questions, and once you're comfortable with this, please hit play again, and then we'll move on to looking at the next trading block, which is something called a customs union. Right, everyone, welcome back. Now, customs union then. Now, the EU is a customs union. So the member states in the European Union have free trade. So they are a free trade area. But to get around the problem of the rules of origin, they will have around the EU something that we call a common external tariff. So this will be this free trade between the member states of the European Union, but then it is a common external tariff, which means every member state will impose the same tariffs on products that come into their country from non-EU members. So that means if you're in France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Portugal, wherever, if a good is imported into any of them countries from China, they will all impose the same tax on that good coming in. Now you can see at the bottom of the page how big these tariffs actually are. You know, they are pretty significant. So the average or the general tariff will be roughly 5.5%. But on agricultural products, it tends to be a lot higher. Look at that, 13.5%. So this means being a member of the European Union means that you can have free trade between all the members. But it also means that you're all imposing the same tariffs on non-members. So we're promoting trade between the member states, but it might limit trade with non-member states. Now, clearly, this is probably something that the World Trade Organization will be against. They like the fact it's got lots of trade creation between members, but they don't like the fact that the tariffs that they all impose would lead to trade diversion. So member states might now trade more with less efficient members rather than more efficient non-members. Okay, now this has been done to simply eliminate the need for the rules of origin. Now, another reason, though, it's been done as well, that is to protect industries across Europe. So agriculture, for example, the idea is in many countries across Europe, such as France, agriculture plays a very, very important part of their economy, but they lack advantages in production. So if the tariff was to go, it would mean suddenly that lots of agricultural industries, countries such as France, would die. They decline because more imported things were coming instead. So it protects the jobs and the industries in those different types of economies. Now, what this also means then, because there's a common external tariff, that once you are a member of the European Union, you are no longer free to negotiate a trade deal with any other country on your own. So as a member, France cannot go to America and try to agree a bilateral trade agreement with America or with any other non-member. It would need to be negotiated as a European Union. So that would mean Germany, Italy, Spain, etc. could not go to China to sign a new trade agreement. It would need to be done as a complete unit. So the bloc wouldn't need to negotiate that on the behalf of all of the members. What you can hopefully see then is here that the members have lost some of their sovereignty. They can no longer go and sign their own trade agreements with non-members. Right, now, before I give you some questions to think about, I just want to go back again to this table. So look what a customs union does. We take a free trade agreement, and what we now do, we impose a common tariff on non-members. So the imports into the trading bloc from non-members will have tariffs placed upon them. The next one we're going to be thinking about is a common market. A common market will again start off with the previous one, a customs union, and then we're going to make it a bit more sophisticated by adding another level of integration to it. Now, before we get to that, what I would like to do, please, is to think about question 3. So these questions are all about customs unions. So please write down these questions, jot down your answers, and when you think you're comfortable with customs unions, please hit play, and then we'll move on. Right, welcome back, everyone. This next type of trading bloc is something that we call a common market. So we're still a free trade area. We're still a customs union. So we've got free trade between members, but we've also got a common external tariff on non-members. But what we're now going to do is to add another layer of integration. We're not just going to allow goods and services to flow freely between members. We're now going to allow for the free movement of factors of production. So we're now going to allow firms to invest into other members with no barriers. So that will mean multinationals from France in the EU, for example, could go and set up in Germany with no restrictions at all. We're also going to allow for the free movement of labour. So allow the citizens of one country to go live and work in other members across that trading bloc. Now, with this one, there are some huge advantages. So the EU, for example, is a common market. Now, when Britain was a full member of the European Union, we had lots of benefits from this. So the fact that firms could freely move to other members across the EU meant that Britain was able to attract lots of foreign direct investment from countries such as Germany and France. So their firms would set up production in our economy and create jobs. The free movement of labour meant that our workers were in direct competition with other EU workers, and competition genuinely drives up productivity. But we had a lot of movement of labour of EU citizens into the UK economy. So people from Poland, etc., came to the UK, drawn here by higher wage rates. And the idea would be that when these workers flood into the UK economy, it will allow UK firms to access a cheaper supply of labour, so it brings down business costs, but also fill labour shortages. So in some industries in the UK, such as manufacturing, working in care homes, in agriculture, there can often be a lack of workers. Well, we can fill these labour shortages by bringing in migrant labour from the EU. Another reason, though, as well, is to fill skill gaps. We have a lot of vacancies in the UK where the UK has no one or limited numbers of people with appropriate skills. Well, this would allow us to bring people in to fill those gaps as well. Okay, now some people would argue though that there are some problems of this. It also means that our firms might move production overseas into the rest of the EU, where maybe production is cheaper. It could also mean that the big influx of migrant labour could create lots of social problems in the UK. You've got burdens on the housing market. How are we going to look after all these people? Are they going to push up property prices? If they bring down wage rates, you've got the problems associated with that. If they're taking jobs away from British people, again, many people might be against that as well. Okay, and that was a key reason, everyone, why a lot of people voted to leave the EU. It was the immigration caused by the free movement of labour. I think it's worth noting, though, that it goes both ways. The free movement of labour allowed British people to go live and work overseas. Right, now, anyway, what I'd like to now do is to think about these questions linked to common markets. Again, please hit pause, put down your answers, and when you're comfortable with common markets, again, please hit play. Right, everyone, again, welcome back. I just want to go back to this table again here. So look at what we've done. Preferential trade agreement, we've got very limited integration between members. They agree to reduce protectionist policies, but they don't remove them. So some tariffs on goods and services will remain between the members. A free trade agreement would step it up a little bit, where you would fully remove tariffs and protectionist policies between members. So that will allow more free trade to take place between the members of that trading bloc. A customs union will bring in the common external tariff, and that takes away the sovereignty of members to negotiate their own trade deals with other countries across the world. But it's been designed to remove the problems of trade deflection and the need for the rules of origin. A common market will step it up further by introducing the free movement of factors of production. So this could be the free movement of people and the free movement of finance as well between members. What we're now going to do is take it up a further notch by looking at something we call economic and monetary union. Right, now anyway, let me show you a bit of information. Now the EU is a free trade area, it is a customs union, a market, and at its core it's also a monetary and economic union. Now an economic union would mean that the member states will align their economic policies. So what that will mean is they'll try to coordinate the same rules and regulations in each country. So every country is working with the same rules and policies. No one gets an unfair advantage over another country. They're all following the same environmental laws, etc. But they're also all trying to follow similar monetary and fiscal policies as well. Okay, so they all might be trying to reduce national debt at the same time. There might be a transfer of money between more successful members and less successful members. Now, the monetary union part of it is probably the most controversial part of this. The idea would be that what countries are now doing, they're eliminating a huge barrier to trade, and that is exchange rate uncertainty. Think about it logically. If you were in France that used to use the French franc and Germany that used to use the German Deutschmark, we want those two countries to be trading closely with each other. And the problem is when they had their own currencies, they had the problems of transferring one currency and exchanging it for another one. That carried a cost. But you also had exchange rate uncertainty, which made it very difficult for people to calculate prices and costs. So as a way of solving this problem, monetary union was introduced. And what the members did, or many of the members did, they joined a currency union. So they all, in effect, scrapped their own domestic currencies and all adopted a single currency, which, of course, in Europe is called the euro. Now, what they also had to do was to all abolish their own independent central banks. So I once took students to Belgium. We went to Brussels, and the central bank in Brussels is now literally a museum. It no longer has any functions whatsoever in terms of monetary policy. So what this will mean is that each member of the euro has abolished their currency. They've got rid of their central bank, and it's been replaced by a single currency, the euro. And they've also got a new central bank, which they all share. Now, the central bank in Europe is called the European Central Bank, the ECB. The picture in the top right-hand corner shows the ECB, and this is based in Frankfurt in Germany. Okay, so the ECB is responsible for setting interest rates and monetary policy for all the member states that are in the euro. And the idea is what this will do, it will allow for more economic certainty between members, more stability. It also means they're all sharing the same fiscal and monetary policy, and there's no exchange rate uncertainty at all because they all share the same currency. So that in effect now means that these countries are now in effect states within the European Union. So they become member states. So when you think about America, the United States of America, the EU, through monetary and economic unions, almost made individual countries now states. So Florida, Texas, etc. in America is the same as France, Germany, Italy in Europe to a certain extent. Now, for monetary union to be successful, the members must have very similar business cycles. Now, the logic of this is, think about it. If you're now sharing a central bank, you've only got one interest rate set by the bank. It won't vary in France, Germany, Italy, etc. So the idea would be if France is in recession, they need lower interest rates. What if Germany was in a boom and they need higher interest rates? You've got a conflict there. Which one would you go for? But if they're all following the same business cycle, they will all need lower interest rates when they're all in recession. And if they're all booming, they also all would need higher interest rates. So for monetary policy to work, they must be sharing the same business cycles. And that will make sure that monetary policy can be used effectively to correct negative and positive output gaps. Now, what we also need for successful here is a free movement of labour and capital. And think about it, why? The idea is that what we want to do is to be able to move workers across the EU to where they're most needed. So if Germany's booming and they need more workers, we want people to be able to flood in from areas of the EU where unemployment is higher. Now, further to what we also want is a fiscal transfer between members. So what we want all economies within the area to be stable, performing at similar rates of economic performance. Let's say, for example, Germany was booming and France was struggling, then what we would need through the European government would be for money to transfer through that government into the weaker nations. So that could mean that Germany will be sending government spending over to France to support improved economic performance there. And that will promote improved economic stability between all of these different members. Now, when you think about it, if I just go back to this, the UK, they signed up to the EU under a free trade agreement. We accepted the customs union. We accepted the common market. We went as far as common market with the EU, but then we didn't go full hog. We never joined the euro. So Britain was part of the common market of the EU, but we never joined economic and monetary union. For many people, it was a step too far. Right. Now, what I would like to do is to think about these questions linked to common markets. So please now, if you can, oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. I want you to think about these questions linked to monetary and economic union. So if you can now please jot down your answers for these. And when you are finished with these, please hit play. I've got one more slide that I want to show you. Right, now this slide just tries to bring it all together. You've got here all the benefits and all the drawbacks of trading blocks. Now, the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 benefits are linked to, just to be honest, trading blocks in general. They could apply to any form of trading block. So we've got a huge one, trade creation. So if we're removing barriers between members, we're going to have more trade based on specialization. That should lead to more productivity, more output, more competition. And that can act as a huge supply side benefit for these countries. What trade creation also is, it brings down prices. It gives consumers more choice, and that should lead to better economic welfare. What it also does is it promotes FDI between members. So if German firms can expand into, let's say, Poland, and then trade freely between Poland and Germany, it creates a bigger supply chain across the members, and that encourages firms to invest further afield into the members, which encourage more integration and more jobs to be created between the different countries. What the FDA also does, it allows for a transfer of technology between the different members as well. What you also get, though, is more economic power. If you're a group of countries that are now working closer together, well, you become more attractive for other countries across the world. They're thinking if we can trade increasingly with those countries, we can access a bigger market for our goods and services. So a good example would be NAFTA, which is made up of America, Canada, and Mexico. Well, what a non-member would think is if we can negotiate trade with Mexico, it's giving us a good chance of trading with America and Canada as well. So it's giving Mexico more power on that global stage. Same in Africa. If smaller African nations create trading blocks, they become more attractive to other trading blocks across the world, because it's a bigger market of people we can potentially trade with if we can sort out multilateral trade agreements. So more power is certainly a key benefit for trading blocks. When you think about the UK, our voice was much bigger on the global stage as part of the EU than it will be on our own. And then finally, just to bring this one together, really, it's more trade based on comparative advantage. It's promoting specialization, which always boosts productivity. It means firms are producing to a bigger market. They can benefit from more economies of scale and make lots of other huge cost savings. Now, remember, if we go towards a common market, what we're now doing is we're bringing in the idea of a free movement as well. So it allows firms to bring in skilled labor, fill skill gaps, tackle labor shortages, make labor markets more competitive, which can benefit business in terms of lower wages. It's a supply side improvement for the economy as well. If we join a monetary union, so go the whole hog and join a single currency, then what we're doing, we're eliminating transaction costs. So if you were to change pounds into euros, there's a fee involved for that. So if you're a business buying billions of pounds or dollars or euros every year, if you're not having to exchange currencies when you trade, that can save you a fortune. Another big benefit, though, as well, is price transparency. If every member uses the same currency, it allows consumers to more closely compare prices between different members. Now, if that can happen, that should promote more competition. A good example was when France used to use the French franc and Germany used the German Deutschmark. Britain had the pound. It's very difficult to compare prices due to the different prices being in different currencies across the trading bloc. If they're all the same currency, you can compare the prices easier, and that promotes more competition. It gives consumers more information on where the best deals can be had. Now, what you're also doing is eliminating currency fluctuations. When you think about spiced, strong pound imports cheap, exports dear. A stronger pound means our exports going into Europe become more expensive, but that makes it more difficult to export to Europe. Firms have got that uncertainty that they struggle to deal with. You think about Whippedec. If you're a firm that relies on importing, well, a weaker currency means you pay more for those imports. So if you've got the same currency, you're eliminating the risks and the problems of those exchange rate uncertainties. Right now, drawbacks though. What we know is that trade agreements or trading blocks tend to be at a regional level. If we're imposing common external tariffs, then you've got trade creation, but it's also leading to trade diversion. So that could mean there's less trade based on specialization because of the barriers that trading bloc has put around it. Next one I'll talk about is the increased risks of structural employment. So what you know is if you're in a trading bloc, there's an increased likelihood that industries that you're efficient at will grow. That's good. But of course, there's a big risk that inefficient industries that you're not very good at will start to decline because of the increased competition. Now, that would lead to potential deindustrialization, big industries closing down. And that could lead to a big loss of jobs in those economies. And those workers might lack the skills to move into them new growth industries. Next one, common markets. So the idea of that free got the problems of labour flows. So Britain, for example, many people voted against remaining in the EU because of this. The immigration into the UK meant that you had problems. You've got a growing demand for housing. That leads to higher rental prices, higher property prices, makes it more difficult for people to get on the property ladder. That can lead to growing inequality and relative poverty. The big influx of labour also brought down wage rates in lots of professions and low-skilled jobs. Well, that led to, again, more inequality opening up between richer people and poorer people. So people saw that immigration as a huge burden, if you like. They also saw the problems for social services. If you've got millions of extra people flooding into your economy, healthcare services become strained, trying to deal with that big influx of people. Now, if you go for a monetary union, there are some problems with this as well. So if you joined a single currency, you've got what we call transition costs. So the one-off cost of changing currencies. So if Britain had adopted the euro, for example, then we'd have had to ask business to change all their menus, change all their systems, etc., to reflect the new currency. Well, that would create a huge one-off cost to the economy. The next one would be loss of independent monetary policy. So the idea would be that Britain, if we join the euro, would mean that our interest rates would be determined by the European Central Bank in Frankfurt. And that would mean we'd be unable to use monetary policy to support our own macroeconomic performance. So a good example could be that if we dropped into recession, we'd have to wait for the European Central Bank to cut interest rates. We wouldn't be able to do it off our own back. Well, the problem is very unlikely that there's going to be one interest rate, which is great for the whole of the European Union. So it's unlikely we'll be able to effectively use monetary policy to support macroeconomic performance. And then finally, it's that loss of exchange rate flexibility. There are times when you might want to manipulate your currency value upwards or downwards. And that's covered in the exchange rate topic or videos. Well, if you've all got the same currency, that power has been lost to you. You've been no longer able to do it. Right, guys, just to bring together this video, it's been quite a lengthy one. I just want to go back to this. So just remember that a preferential trade agreement is the first step towards a trading bloc. It's the most basic one there is. We're lowering trade restrictions. A free trade agreement will completely eliminate them trade restrictions. A customs union will then build on that by having a common external tariff. A common market will then build on that by allowing for the free movement of factors of production. Economic and monetary union will bring in the harmonization of monetary and fiscal policy and lead to economies abandoning their own central bank and adopting a shared single currency. Right, guys, I'm going to end it there. Thank you very much.